Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, badass.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm doing good today.
Good.
I'm excited about this weekend.
Are you?
Yes.
Tell me more.
Well, to this evening, Riley does her first aerial silks performance.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And so they are doing Stranger Things. And
so
they
cool.
even had a particular prop that had been talked about by an expert person and an expert prop person. So, you know when 11 has to, have you seen Stranger Things?
Yes.
Okay. So when 11 ends up taking that can and melting it down or crushing it, he created a can that allows you to be able to, it looks like it's crushing it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
I know.
Yeah. I have a terrible memory, especially for TV. But it's such a great show. And I love all, it's like the only sci-fi that these like shows that have been out more recently, like that and like Game of Thrones, like it's opening up a little bit of sci-fi in Jenna's world, because otherwise Jenna only likes to watch things about cartels and murder and rape.
Isn't it weird? Because I'm really into that too. And I'm not as into sci-fi stuff, but you give me SVU or Criminal Minds, I'm all on that.
Right. And the hilarious thing is like if a dog gets hurt or an animal of some sort, she's like, I can't watch this. Like it took me a couple of tries to get us through John Wick, because the beginning of that movie, when the dog gets killed, she's like, turn it off. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure the whole movie is about revenge for this moment. And she's like, turn it off, and literally she like, and I don't care because I actually don't really like watching TV or movies. I mean, I'm like it for the entertainment purpose, but I have a hard time like just doing that, So I'm usually like doing other things. And, and she literally flipped it to like SVU, and there were like, and she flipped it on, and there was like, like it was just starting the thing, and it said like molestation across the bottom, and I was like, oh, see, that's okay, that's perfectly fine. And we just died laughing because it was like the timing was perfect. In the opening when it has like the words across the, do do do, the music, and then Well, I'm super excited about it. She plays two different parts. She plays Robin, which that's the part that she really wanted to play. And then she also plays Henry, which is number 1. And that's going to be, I haven't seen any of this yet. So I've been purposely staying outside, not watching her practice, because I want to be surprised in her performance. Oh my God. The willpower you have. Wow, that's amazing. Did you find out the sex of her when you were pregnant?
Yes.
Or were you okay?
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had that, if you were like that kind of, I want to be surprised.
No.
Like, that I feel like is like, I think there's just a special class of humans out there that can grow another human for 10 months and just not know, what sex it is. I think that's like, it's like crazy.
No, I want to prepare, and I will do things to make sure that I'm prepared for what she's doing performance wise. Like I'm not going to make decisions that aren't preparing for things, but having a baby, like, no, I need to prepare for like, what do I need to buy? And like that.
Right.
Well, we have some people coming on. I'd like to say hello to them. So Heather is coming in. Good morning, Heather. She says, good morning, badasses. Hope you've had a great week.
Thank you.
I think we have.
I hope you have as well.
Yeah. Hope you have a great weekend too. Hopefully we're starting you off with a great weekend.
Yes.
All right. And then we have Kim. Good morning to my favorite beautiful badass ladies.
Good morning, Kim.
Yes.
Kim brings up a great point. Are you going to live stream Riley's performance?
Oh, well, just so you know, Kim is coming.
Oh, wow. There are people that care that aren't close by.
I know.
But was that hard? Was it kind of distracting for you?
It is, but I think they're still wanting me to do it again, just because it also helps the performers.
Yeah.
So the performers are able to see like what's going on and when it is they need to come in. So I will probably live stream it,
Cool.
but it'll be a private link. So
yeah.
So if you want to see it, and just let me know, I can send it to you.
Yeah, I
Okay.
want to see it.
Yeah. And then I think this might be Megan. She says, "Happy Friday, everyone. Yay to more sci-fi in our lives."
Good morning, Megan. Happy Friday.
Heather also said, "Nope, no thank you. I'll take nature documentaries and paranormal shows. I can't watch any of that true crime, violence, etc."
Oh, I do really love gruesome murders and like blood and stuff on shows. If I'm gonna watch a show, like I want to watch like Vikings or something where they're like just killing each other. I don't know. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Kim also said, "Sorry, that didn't make sense. I can't wait to see Riley's performance." So I know we always have some lurkers as well. So hello to you out there. If you want to say hello, be sure to say hello to us as well. As you guys are coming in, continue to say hello so we can acknowledge you. And so what I would like to do is go ahead and bring on our two panelists today. So we are continuing the law of correspondence. And so if you guys can make sure you come off of mute, I'm going to bring everybody on stage. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, guys.
Good morning.
Well, thank you both for coming. And so I wanted to have each of you do a little bit of an introduction to yourself. So I'm just going to start up at the top. So Dr. Calvin, if you could just tell us who you are, what you're passionate about, just a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I'll do the best I can. Thank you so much, Sarah. So I'm Calvin Lawrence, and I am a motivational speaker and a new author. In the background, you see my Happy Leader, the book title. Wow. And I've been in education, or was in education, for 41 years. So that kind of gives you a impetus for my age. We had been talking about age earlier, and I don't want to get into that one, but one of the things about age is when you get older, you do, and Cari's laughing, you do, it's not easy, but you learn how to adjust, and that's part of the deal. So I'm adjusting. So what else? I'm passionate about bringing people together. And part of the reason for doing the book was to bring people together and to reflect on why we're more alike than apart or different. Yeah. And so all those things that would bring us together, you have those conversations. I'm really looking forward to having a great conversation today. Hopefully bringing more people together through a program and a podcast like this one. And it looks like there's a great group of ladies here to work with.
Awesome. I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And so I just wanted to, also give a little bit of a shout out to Dr. Colleen Seringer. So she was the person that connected us. We had said, hey, we still need a fourth. We are looking, we like to balance it out. Kate and I feel like we bring the combination of masculine, feminine energy, sometimes together, but we like to also make sure that we're balancing things out. We have that, we like just having different types of backgrounds. We like having different, types of feminine and masculine energy. So whenever I told her I was looking for someone that could complement the group, she had suggested you. And so I just want to thank her for that.
Yeah, when we do the panels, we like to have, a male and a female if we can, because otherwise we're just hearing from the same, a lot, I think our audience definitely skews female a little bit. And we're definitely, we want to make sure that we're representing kind of all sorts of individuals. And, As much as we like to think the world's all about us, it's certainly not, right? Unfortunately. Okay, let's meet Cari. I love Cari has been a long time audience member, and we had a running joke like the first season about forcing Cari to come on and interview people with us, like, because she's hilarious and always has amazing comments and contributions. So super excited that we could finally make this work. I think we actually had one scheduled and then had it, something happen. I don't remember, but you were traveling or something. But this has been awesome to actually get to know you a little bit and see your face, because you're local to Sarah, right? Like, you guys know each other in the real world.
Yes, for a real long time too, but we won't go there. The last century, as they say now. So I'm Cari Gerrits. I am not a doctor like Dr. Lawrence. So everything that I'm talking about is just things that I've sussed out through my experience spinning around this blue marble in space. I work in the architectural engineering community. I'm still and sometimes shocked at how that transpired, because I am not an architect, nor am I an engineer, and I don't like math. But Dr. Lawrence said something that really resonated with me, and he said the things that make us alike are so much more interesting than the things that make us different. And I read that in a book when I was in college, and so that really resonated with me then. It still does now, and I think that's kind of how I try to navigate my life. Oh, passions. Oh, goodness. Well, there's so many. How much time do we have? Reading, sports, travel, lifelong learning, and if all else fails, sarcastic comment. So have a big family, love them a lot, get to see them as much as I can. Fortunate to have friends involved with animal rescue. So yeah. Awesome. There's not much I don't like other than math.
We've already covered that. So
there you go.
The rest is wide open.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So today we're going to be talking further about the law of correspondence. That's been our topic for the month. So we are finishing things out for the law of correspondence today with you guys. And so I thought it might be appropriate just to first start with having you each share maybe an example from your own experience where you addressed maybe inner turmoil that was that provided maybe significant change on your external outcome. As we know, the law of correspondence is the inner impacts the outer. So maybe you could talk a little bit of an example of your experience where you experienced inner turmoil that ended up impacting the external outcome. So Cari, do you want to start first?
Sure. There's several things that come to mind, but the one that I think I'm going to talk most about is there was a period of time back in the last century. I went through a really bad breakup, and it was during the aftermath of that I realized that when I'm stressed or triggered or feeling just sad and overwhelmed, that for me, that energy, if I don't get it out through walking, talking, whatever, it manifested in such a fashion that my doctor thought I had IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And we couldn't figure it out. And we tried diet and we tried exercise and we did all this stuff. And we were just getting ready to the point where we're going to have to do all these tests and studies and food, removing things from diet. And something happened and I removed the source of that stress from my life, and my symptoms vanished overnight. And I would say 20 some years later, I probably have about a 90% improvement in that manifestation of stress. And so the good news is some people can stay in my heart, but they can't stay in my life. The really good news is I learned that is how my body reacts. You know, some people get hives. Sarah, last week you were talking about inner frustration and how it affected your voice and laryngitis and communication.
Yeah.
And so that was really just an eye-opening thing for me. And so it really started to make me take stock of the energy I was receiving, the energy I was putting out, and really paying attention to the feelings in my body. Because typically, you know, when you're young and you don't know, you just power through because you think, well, this is my version of normal. And, you know, it is what it is. But as you are blessed with aging, you realize, okay, there's something my body's trying to tell me and I need to listen. So
yeah,
I love that so much. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about in the past that you're bringing up that we haven't touched upon, really, I guess we did maybe a little bit in that last episode, but we didn't. You're really talking about the fact that when we have inner turmoil, we will start to see that manifest physically in our bodies. And so that's one of the things that I've come to find out is that disease, yes, we might have predisposition, but really disease is caused by that unreleased negative emotion that is stuck inside us. And so that's amazing that you were able to figure out that, no, this isn't really IBS, or maybe it may be demonstrating or showing in that way. But the real issue is that I have this emotion that I still have stuck within me that I'm needing to deal with. And so I'd like to sort of open it also up to the audience. Think about the things in your life and anything you want to share, things that you have experienced or things you are experiencing, and then think about that and wonder about whether that's actually tied to something emotional, because a lot of times it can be also in the past, things that you don't even realize that were stuck there. And for those that don't know and haven't ever heard of this person, her name is Louise Hayes. If you've never heard of her, you can also look her up. She also provides information on how physical illness actually manifests itself and what it's actually tied to. So it could be something related to your mother. It could be related to your father. It could be something, something else, so it's all of those things. Like, you don't bring joy into your life, like you're, not allowing joy. So I just wanted to mention that particular name, because I don't think I've ever shared that particular name, Louise Hayes, and you can find things like that. And I think I've also shared my book that has that as well. So thank you, Cari. I think that's very impactful. Dr. Calvin, what about you?
Yeah, well, I don't have one. Cari was kind of, I don't know if she was teasing earlier about, the doctor part and all this other stuff, and being all this profound, and that's just the title, so I can drop that, and it's just Calvin. But but here's the deal, because Cari just shared one that's personal, and I was thinking about this one, and it's more of a professional one, so maybe that's a good yin and yang kind of deal here.
Absolutely.
Too. So, and this one was the one that brought me to Texas, and so it was something that happened, and then it happened, and then internally, I don't know how I processed it, but I processed it way back when. So just like Cari said, this was pre-2000. It was the last century, not this century. And it was when I was a lot younger, and I think I still had some hair back then. But this wasn't the reason that I lost all my hair. That I want to make that real clear. So going way back into the 1980s. I was working in a school district, and I had I felt like I was doing something. I was creating and whatnot. And I'm gonna make this long story short. And then we got word that from higher ups that we weren't maybe what we thought we were. And I remember the comment to this day. The guy said, "Well, you guys are a dime a dozen." Now, I was coaching and teaching in a district, and when this upper administrator said we could fire you and hire somebody else like you the next day, and he made me feel like, internally, I know I felt like I was maybe like this much, and I had never felt like that. 5 years in is tough anyway, no matter what you're working in, because you're trying to still figure out, am I good at what I do? Am I, what?
Right.
And so I really had this internal war, and I can see it now. Should I stay in this field or should I get out of this field? Because if I'm going to be valued at that level by this guy who's supposed to have this great knowledge about everything, then I don't want to be valued at that level. And so, long story short, I had this epiphany by someone who was outside my field, because I was, this is funny. It kind of bleeds into what we've been talking about with crime scene investigation shows and all this other stuff. Well, I was going to become that guy, y'all. I was going to go into law enforcement. So I had gotten into like the fourth interview, because I'm getting out of education, right? And then the guy says, profoundly, he says, everybody can't do what you do. And they had not cut me off. So I was on my way to the next step to the interview, but I never came back for the interview. You know why? Because something inside of me said, yeah, everybody can't do what you do. And maybe this is what you're called to do. So in a roundabout way, it led to me researching and looking for what's the next thing, get my master's. Where's the master's going to be? It's got to be paid for. Texas opened up the door, and voila, I wind up in Texas. Now, the rest of it staying here to Texas, that's another story. I may tell that later. But I got to Texas, and I continued in my educational career because of something that somebody said. But before that, there was this internal struggle of, I don't need to stay in this role if I'm going to be valued at that low of a level. And it wasn't anything else other than, that kind of thing. And so it really was a powerful thing to change the whole course and direction of my life. Because if not, I probably am still in Virginia. I'm probably not on the show today. So I'm thankful for that. And that I got an opportunity to do a lot of different things and meet a lot of different people because of something that happened way back when.
That's awesome. What a great story. I think, there's so many things that you said, and I love the point that you made around, and it was kind of a minor point in the whole story, but you said, when you are 5 years into something and you're not sure, if you're good at it or not, and then you experience something, you have this interaction with someone, you're still young at that point, right?
Right.
And maybe your brain wasn't even done developing. You know what I mean?
Right. You're right.
Yeah. And then someone you trust or admire, sizes you up, and that becomes a part of how you see yourself internally. Sometimes, so I think that's a really valid point that those experiences, whether they're in childhood or whether they're in young adult or beyond, but they can shape how we view ourselves, and that has a profound effect on the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Yeah. So Heather said it's amazing how one small comment by someone we don't know can shape the trajectory of our lives. And so it is interesting that we do have a choice in that moment. We can either choose to say, this person doesn't know me, I know me. Or we can also reflect upon what it is the person's saying and saying, well, why is it that they feel that way? And then do I care about what it is that this person says? And so in that moment, do you feel like you cared what that person, and not necessarily what the person's, the person, but what it is they said? It sounds like you cared about what it is that they sort of said to you, and you started to rethink some of the things that were going on in your life.
Sarah, I definitely did. And I'm a guy, right? So at that stage in my life, maybe 27 or so, I'm not maybe as well developed as some of you ladies would be at that point, but I know it hit me in a way that I had never really thought about myself and my self-worth. And it really, changed. There are some things that were going on with me that, I think I also, and I didn't add this, I also got some really good help from outside. There are some people who I went to immediately to try to say, is this what you think of me? What do you think of me? And that kind of thing. And then going back to what one of the people in the audience, Heather, I think it was Heather, who shared that great little piece, that one small comment, and it stuck to me to this day. I don't have to write it down because I know what the guy said and how impactful it was. And it made me just think. I walked out of that office and I was like, and you said it too, Sarah, I could have taken it the other way and I could have just done a downward spiral. Mm-hmm. And I guess some people go to the spiral to the degree of the extreme would be suicide. The other extreme would be, hey, I'm better than that. I'm going to do something. I'm going to take it to the next level. And that's kind of the way it kind of turned out with some help. I wasn't smart enough myself to figure all that stuff out, but with a little help, I decided I can make myself better at what I do. If I'm going to stay in this craft, I'm going to improve myself. And then, so how do you do that? You get some more, whatever knowledge or learning, or, you improve, and then you're going to, I guess part of it too is I'll show you. I'm going to be that person that you don't think I am. Well, hey buddy, I'm going to be as good as they come, and we'll see what you think about that. But yeah.
I want to sort of hover on this particular topic. I think we've hit upon something that I think everyone experiences. And Heather, just said, yes, do I care is such a wonderful question to ask ourselves to help us take a moment and think before we react and internalize. And this is one of the things that I say to my daughter. She'll say, this person said this. And the first question I ask her is, well, who is this person to you?
Who's the person?
Do you care what this person thinks?
Right.
And she, how are they important? I ask, are they important to you? And she says, well, no. And I said, well, then why do you care what it is that they think? She's like, but they think this about me. And I'm like, okay, but if you don't care, about this person's opinion, then why do you care about the opinion that they have of you?
Right.
I wholeheartedly agree. I had an epiphany once. There was somebody that kept telling me to go to this restaurant, had to go to this restaurant. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. You're going to love it. Fine. So I finally went, got a bunch of my girlfriends. We went and we all were underwhelmed and hated it. And I thought in that moment, why did I listen? This is not a person.
Why did you listen?
Right. I mean, they just kept saying it. And I said, okay. And then I realized, lovely guy, but not someone I probably would really hang out with, really be friends with, acquaintance.
Right.
Why did I put stock in what he said? I mean, and that was just a restaurant. So imagine if it's somebody that says, well, why did you cut your hair? Or what, okay, one, why do you care? But two, let's keep our eye on the real ball that's bouncing across the screen,
I think I brought this up before. I still remember this comment from this person, and it was a female, and she was like, she was like telling me what I needed to do with my makeup. And I still remember it to this day. And I now have purposely done like the opposite. I wear no makeup. And I'm like, fuck you. I don't need any makeup.
Right.
And so now I've like gone the opposite. Like, I'm going to prove that, no,
I'm going to prove it. Right.
I don't need an extra, blush, to make me, this, wonderful leader or whatever. I have no idea how that would actually impact me other than, you think that's a particular beauty thing that everyone needs.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah.
It's insane that the things that people are willing to say sometimes to other people, right? Like that,
Yeah. And it's insane, Kate, how we internalize it. And as we're saying here, and the point is, why does it make a difference? And if that person's not that important to you, it shouldn't make a difference. But it's insane that we do it. We do it all the time. And maybe, and here's our deal, going back to our thing about getting older, Cari, we get to a certain point and we don't care anymore. But I wish I'd had that internalization concept way back when. I know some people get it earlier than others. I always say I'm a late bloomer. I get this stuff late. I got to a room with these great, incredible ladies late. So, y'all can all know I'm a late bloomer. But it would be kind of neat if you could get this stuff down early. And I guess that's why mentoring is so important, because if you can help somebody to start realize, just like what Sarah did with her daughter, why is that important? Why is what that person said important? And if they're not that important and you start thinking about it and you say, well, you know what? Maybe it's not that important. And I am who I think I am, or my mom says I am, or somebody else who I really care about, as opposed to this person. And we got to get that across to some of our younger people a little bit earlier, because I think it would surely help a whole lot.
And I think we also need to continue to do it with other adults as well.
Yes.
Because people are still stuck in this. Like I do it with my daughter. She's not quite getting it yet. And I'm like, oh, I know at that age, you care about everything. So but you just continue. And eventually she's going to go, oh, you know what? Mom always said this. Like, why do I care what this person thinks? Eventually it'll snap with her. Carrie, did you have something?
Or mom like this. I'm sorry, Carrie, I'm going to jump in real quick. Or mom like this. You've been saying it, but it takes somebody else to come along and say the same thing, because at some point, mom, you've been saying all this time, so I put up a wall, but sooner or later it hits and they like, that is true. And so it happens, but you just kind of have to keep doing it, because it's gonna get in there sooner or later. And you don't know, it's different with different people. Right.
Right. So that third party endorsement, Sarah, probably validates lots of parents, because I'm sure it did mine talking to the 6 of us. The one thing that I have taken from what you guys have shared is that as communicators, or as people that are talking to other people, it's very important that we be mindful of what we're saying and how we're saying it, right? Because a lot of times the tone can trigger, and Sarah knows me very well. I'm very outspoken. I'm very blunt. I don't like bullying. I'm not going to cower down, and that can be a blessing and a curse. But in the five decades I've been here, I've learned that, okay, one, you need to practice your pause and see if this is something that is worth responding to. And if so, figure out how to not have the message that I'm conveying back, or digging in as to why they said that, lost in either my tone or my blunt directness. So, you never know when you're making a memory, I guess is what I'm saying. And, may we all have the wisdom to make good memories, but we all know we have bad memories. I remember stuff that was said to me when I was 4 years old. It's just it is what it is, and it just I hope makes us all more mindful and
of what we say,
empathetic. To because you don't know. I mean, some teacher told me once one thing, and of course, 45 years later, I still think I'm a horrible speller and I can't do anything and X, Y, and Z. So just be mindful of that, everybody. I think
that's true.
Yeah.
Good.
100%. It was, and I'll just be totally open about this, because one of the reasons why we homeschooled our children is exactly that, like less exposure to peers and to a lot of other opinions in this world. And I get that that's, first of all, a total privilege, right? There's so many people that can't afford to do that or can't, right? But it's something to think about, because I don't think it's a coincidence that we ended up with 6 kids that is not a concern for them. They aren't very worried about what everybody else thinks. But it's also, it also, as I'm seeing them age, they're now going from this kind of world where they got to just totally be whatever they wanted to be. And now they're out in the workforce and they're around other people, and they're appalled. The people have parents that do that, they just weren't exposed to it. So, even our oldest, he had this revelation at 19. He was like, do you know how many women my age are just like, their moms are so mean to them, you know? And they were like, they have these horrible, I'm going on these dates and every single one of them has a terrible relationship with their parents, you know? And he's like, maybe I'm dating the wrong people. Maybe, you know, I don't know, you know? And our, you know, and the same thing happened with our 17-year-old and the same thing's happening with our 16-year-old. As they branch out, they're like, there's a lot of pain out there. People have been bullied their whole lives. You know, like these were just like stories that they read about because they weren't in those situations, and then they're in it, and so that's been so eye-opening for us, because although we were seeking that protection initially, you know, you can't delay it forever, right? So it's still there, you know, and it's been really interesting to watch how that kind of manifests. But it also speaks to exactly what Cari was saying, that the environments that you are in, they have an impact forever sometimes, you know? Yes. And so it's super important to be as careful as you can. We're all human, you know, we all do shit that we shouldn't. But you know, if you can remember that your words and actions can really help, like, almost define someone, right? It's a huge responsibility.
It is that so powerful.
I think I one time said to somebody, the more people I meet, the more functional I seem, because you know, when you're growing up and you're in your bubble, and then, you know, whether you go to school or whether you go to work, and your universe expands, and you think, oh my gosh, you know, I'm around these crazy people, and, you know, I went to a bad school system, and, you know, and then you start meeting people. And I think that's one of the beauties of travel, is it gets you out of your own world and gets you an exposure to the reality that, yes, everybody has struggles, right? I don't want to minimize anybody's journey, but if you are only around everyone that thinks just like you, does what you do, all those things, you never get any recollection that, that wasn't great, but holy cow, shouldn't I count my blessings? Or it should be so much worse. Now, they could be both things, you know, one isn't independent of the other, but it was just very telling that, you know, you're like, wow, okay, so we had our challenges, but you know, it's just eye-opening. And I think that's why travel is good for people, you know.
I'll jump in on this one because I love this one, and it's the one that my mom, if I can give her credit for anything, she put that into me and my baby sister, and it was that she got us this exposure, and it was so good because, like you said, you can stay in a place where everybody thinks like you and looks like you and all this other stuff, but once you go out into the world and you get to even for a brief, like a week or whatever it might be for the vacation, and you go to this other part of the country, or you go to another country, and you see how people live, and you can put things in a better perspective as to, you know, what I have. Yeah, it might not be perfect, but look at this, look at that, look at the conditions here, look at how these people are still grateful for what they have, and I got all this stuff, and I'm not grateful for what my mom and my dad are providing for me, and it makes me a little more humble, or made me a lot more humble in terms of looking at people, not judging a book by the cover. That's what I wanted to say. And understanding you got to know the person, get to know the person first before you judge them, because you can judge them. I'm gonna go back to the words though that Cari is so powerful when you said what you said about if you make a statement, or pause before you make a statement, because one statement, and my wife has one that somebody told her it was a bad teacher. There are bad teachers, they're bad principals, they're bad police officers, they're bad, you name it, they're bad. And they'll say something and it's like they don't care what they say, but at a certain time when you're moldable, when you're impressionable, and it hits you, and going to the internal, we internalize it, and sticks and stays in there for so long. And it's almost like you've got to get that out. And then you take it into other relationships. It is a horrible thing. So you got to make sure as best you can, because we're not perfect. We said that, but you pause before I say anything, because I know what it could have done to me, or what somebody said has done to me, and how long it's taken me to get over that. I've got to make sure that I do the best I can. And usually I try, and I do, and then I can sleep at night knowing that I did the best I could with what I had.
Yeah. And the other thing I would just add is sometimes we also will hold on to things and hold on to a memory of a person when that person has continued to evolve too. So we also need to focus on giving grace and also recognizing when a person has continued to evolve, because sometimes we also keep that person sort of where they were in that moment. And so just by giving them grace, and that's where I think for me, the inner, the releasing and forgiveness also is so important. You guys have mentioned the word being grateful as well. And so when we really think about, I know that there are people that have different philosophies. They're like, no, I don't, there are some things I just can't forgive. And I as a person, as a person, I have a hard time with that, because the more that I have focused on forgiveness, because forgiveness really isn't about the other person. It's more about me feeling trapped in the words or the actions or whatever it is that person did to me. I'm trapping myself in being upset and being, whatever, working, feeling worked up about what it is this person did. So for me, forgiveness has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with me releasing the negative energy and feeling okay with who I am as a person as well.
I love that, Sarah, because I remember a quote by Desmond Tutu, the bishop. He said that bitter people don't get better. And if you stay in that bitterness, you're locked in that. So it really is about you. It's not about the other person. It's about, if I can let that thing go, I can think of some other internal situations that were negative for me in my life. And some of them were like the job hiring and then firing kind of situations where they let you go for no reason at all. And you can stay bitter and locked into that internal turmoil with that person. Right. But what I've learned in the last time, and I kind of gave myself a little pat on the back, because I had 24 hours to do my little pity party deal. And then I totally released them of all of whatever it was. And I moved forward, and I don't know where they were with what they did. And if they did it wrong, then it's on them. But what I did was I released it, and I have no qualms about it. And I love that word you said, because I'm working on that word in terms of grace, because forgiveness was a hard one for me, y'all in this room. I usually was the guy who would hold on, and I have a long memory, so that's part of my problem. At 65, I can remember way back. My mom had a great memory too, so I think I got it from her. But if I can forgive and if I can let it go and release it, I know I can move forward. And if I'm going to do all this bridging and bringing people together, I can't hold grudges and all the stuff that I talk about. Then I've got to make sure that I'm real about talking about. Being real is important to me, being the person, so that people will know that I'm who I say I am.
Yeah. I think one caveat to that is, I think sometimes people equate forgiveness with excusing of the behavior.
Yes.
And as someone who comes from a long line of grudge holders and notorious overreactors, I think that it's important to say,
that was
is indifference the same thing as forgiveness? Because do I miss the person, or do I miss who I was when I was with that person, or that time in life, or that is that why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling? But I just some people have had things that happen, and forgiveness, maybe they just can't get there. And I just wanted to put it out there that just because you forgive doesn't
It doesn't
excuse,
mean,
and it
right,
doesn't
doesn't excuse
mean
that
you
wrong.
need
That was that.
to
Right.
continued abuse or whatever it is.
Right.
And that's something that in my 20s, I would have, stayed and tried to fix it and do this. And how can we do? And
Yes.
the beauty of living is that you realize that the toxicity is going to change you more than you're going to be able to fix the toxicity.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that that's important point that you've made, is that when we forgive, it's not about saying that that was acceptable. It's simply saying that hurt me. This is something that impacted me. And whether that person thinks it was right or wrong, and that's one of the things that I've learned, a part of empathy and validation. Because I remember my husband and I going through this, and he was like, well, what if I don't agree with her? How can I validate her whenever I disagree with her? And they're like, validation isn't saying that you agree with this person. You're just saying, I understand how it is that you could feel in that situation. So I'm not saying it was right or it's wrong. And so that's how I've sort of started to look at forgiveness, is that forgiveness is, I still remember what it is this person did. And
it's not amnesia. It's not amnesia.
Exactly.
No, it's not.
And I'm going to use that information. And until you then show signs that you've actually learned from what it is that I've said, like how it impacted me, and you're willing to state, here's what I'll do different in the future, that I'm going to continue to remember it. And I'm going to probably put you a little bit more at a distance, to protect myself, because you haven't actually acknowledged, you also haven't taken the most important part of now saying, here's what I'll do differently. That is also a part of like overall forgiveness with the person. In order to forgive the person, they also have to state how it is that they'll act differently in the future. But for me, I'm still going to forgive myself. And, this is actually one of the things that I talk to people about whenever we talk about molestation, because I was molested whenever I was younger. And whenever I talk to other people, I ask them, have you forgiven yourself? And people pause and go, what do you mean? Like, I know it's not my fault. And I'm like, I know it wasn't your fault, but have you forgiven yourself? Because what we end up doing is we internalize what it is that happened, whether we realize it or not. And we still think somehow we could have prevented that deep down. And so I have found that I also had to forgive myself for, however it is that I was feeling and how it is I'm continuing to feel, to really release what it is that happened.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. I think for me, it took me, I'm going to be 46 this summer, and it took me until I was in my 40s to realize that I had gotten pretty good at forgiving other people, but I had really had a hard time forgiving myself for things. And we all say that, like, we're our hardest critics, right? But so I think, that's so reflective of the law of correspondence, right? Because we can walk around with this shell, up with this harder shell around us. But if we aren't treating ourselves as just as kindly as we would treat someone else,
that was a really eye-opening thing for me, Kate. I always played sports, worked out, did whatever. Finally I was like, I'm going to go to yoga. Okay. And in full disclosure, I am a restorative yoga person, which is where you go and lay and just kind of veg. I'm not the downward dog, upside down roller coaster, whatever it is.
Yeah.
When I did that, it was shocking how negative my internal voice was. We're going to do this pose for 30 seconds. And in my head, you can't do it that long. And I finally learned to just say, just shut up and do it. Right? Just stop talking yourself out of why you can't, and just do it. And sometimes you can do that, and sometimes you can't. But the things I would say to myself, I would never say to my friends. I would,
right.
even probably some of my ex-boyfriends who were not all so great, I wouldn't even say it to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I thought, why am I giving myself permission to do that? So, you know, do I still struggle with it? Absolutely. But what I kind of instituted was, and it's certainly if I said something negative about myself out loud, I had to immediately say 2 good things, right? Because I don't want to just shut it off and then it builds and builds and builds and builds and I get hives or Sarah gets laryngitis or whatever it is.
Right.
And so if you can express that, well, that was a really rookie mistake. Way to go, stupid.
Right.
So, but now you know that doesn't work. So that's one good thing. And 2, you did 7 other things before that happened. So let's focus on those because that allows you to still get that energy out without you just beating yourself up, right? Because the world will beat you up.
Yeah, world will beat you up.
Don't ask them to. And
Yeah.
you don't need to beat yourself up too.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Carrie, by the way, you have a fan here. Go, Carrie, such a
Gotta
badass.
go. A fan.
And then Myra is also here. She says
Good morning, Myra.
And then I just wanted to acknowledge Lisa. She had said I'm late to the party. This was a little bit earlier. She said, good morning, badasses. And then we do have some other comments. So I just wanted to pull some of them up. So Heather also said, I once was a champion grudge holder, but I was only poisoning myself. You're right, Carrie. You can forgive without excusing negative behavior. And then she also added, if you like restorative and haven't tried yin yet, please consider it. So restorative yin is amazing. So I would be interested in that because like the normal yoga, like some of those positions, I'm like, I'm sorry, my body is not made to do that.
Yeah.
Anybody that's blessed, you know, up top, you know, like I'm not going to be able to do some of those things. So I'd be interested to see if that would be a different experience.
Awesome.
Oh, totally.
I'm doing Tai Chi too, and that's been great.
Yeah.
So you know, there's
Tai Chi, yes. Yeah.
And it could be as easy let's do a scenario. Somebody says something at work, you're starting to spiral out of control. You're what am I doing? Why did they hire me? I'm gonna get fired. Stop, breathe. Even if you just do a lap around the office, go to the copy machine.
Right.
I mean, I know that's an old sentence, go to the copy machine, but you know, just don't beat yourself up, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to be so arrogant that people can't stand you, but you need to realize that you deserve as much grace as you're giving.
Right.
Yeah. And I think finding an activity that gives you the opportunity to be mindful, right? So like what we're talking about is, you know, coping through quieting our mind, quieting that negative inner voice, taking that internal and making it as positive as possible so that our outside reflects it, right? That's law of correspondence right there.
Right.
And just find whatever it is, if it's yoga, if it's swimming, you know, we were talking about this at work, you know, for me, swimming for many years was great. Yeah. But it's hilarious because I actually really enjoy swimming, but I'm a terrible swimmer. And so I couldn't think of anything other than breathing because I had to stay alive, like as I was doing it. And so then like, you know, there wasn't space for negative thoughts to be in there, you know, or like, you're not doing this good enough, you know, like, no, let's just back to basics. Let's just breathe, you know, and all of these different things, whether you can meditate or, you know, but that's what yoga and Tai Chi and all these things are really about, right? Is helping us figure out ways to quiet that inner voice and connect it to that movement.
So you guys have mentioned like inner voice, and we've mentioned a couple of things, but sometimes when we're in the thick of it, we can't really see clearly. And so what are indications that maybe beforehand, I find that preparing or, you know, knowing like, oh, when I'm in this situation or when I do this, you know, what are indications that our inner turmoil is affecting our external environment, what are things that you guys have found that, oh, it's these types of things I need to pay attention to, and that's when you know to actually take the pause?
Well, so I think for me, the more turmoil I have inside, I end up being like a whirling dervish. And I'm doing a million things at once. And who's here and where's that? And when did that go? And did you send this? And have I done that? And I need to change the laundry or whatever. So stopping that whirling dervish, that Tasmanian devil tornadic inside helps me calm the outside. And the other thing is that you realize the sun's going to come up and the sun's going to go down. The day today is just one day, so just focus on the day, and what you look for, you see. You know, if you see traffic and red lights and a flood, right? You're going to find what you're looking for, right? So if I'm stuck in Atlanta traffic, which anybody who knows hasn't been here, it's awful. Awful. People go for the ambulance waits. I mean, it's a crazy, crazy place. And so there was a period of time during the Great Recession, I didn't have a vehicle in Atlanta, and Atlanta doesn't have a lot of public transport. Again, this is a very old story. There was no Uber, there was no DoorDash, there was no Lyft. There were really good friends, and there was MARTA. And so some days it worked out well, and everything would go fine. And other days, it would be a challenge to get there. It would rain, we would flood. I'm in a rain suit. I'm trying to keep the computer dry. The trains would break. And so I found myself with all of these experiences and no way to get them out. So I started a blog, and I just started writing about funny things I saw. And so that really kind of reshaped that experience, right? Because, you know, I was in my mid-30s, and, you know, the world was seemingly coming to an end in terms of work and things like that. And so it just really allowed me to reframe and say, okay, all right, the bus is 25 minutes late, but I got to see, you know, a monarch butterfly hatch, or, you know, I saw little kids getting on the school bus, and I never get to see that because I don't have kids. And, and, you know, and then it kind of brought up memories, and that's good. So I think a lot of it is you just have to reframe and see how you feel, and see what you need to see, not necessarily what it is. You know, do you like the rose because of the rose petals, or are you complaining because it has the thorns, right?
Yeah. So Calvin, what about you? What are the inner the indications that you're dealing with that inner turmoil, or the things that stand out to you that you know that you need the pause?
Yeah. So there's probably like pressure on the inside, and I'm an internal guy. I tend to internalize. So I mean, kind of this is where I go. And if I don't let it out some way, then it's gonna blow in a real negative way. And mean, I blow up on someone, I blow up on myself, I get upset. So I know when that happens, I know I need to take a chance or get away or do whatever. I'm kind of listening to what Cari said, and I know that I'm a real active guy when I can do other things. When I can do other things for people, sometimes that's one of my best outs to try to focus on someone else, and then I don't have, my problems aren't so big anymore. But I love getting active. I love getting to help someone. I love doing some other things, and I'll try to lose myself in that. And in the process, usually I come back to myself and realize kind of something that maybe Cari said earlier or somebody else about how it's not as important, it's not that big of a deal, or I understand the deal, and then how do I reshape it and reorganize it so it works for me as opposed to work against me. And that has happened over time, because again, going back to the 30s, basically getting older and kind of having that knowledge of who I am. Maybe 30 years ago, I wouldn't have been so easy to do that. The blow up would have come or whatever. Although when I'm thinking about certain particular instances where I was unduly put upon, and I'm making it really nice, where let's say somebody was cussing me out, and that's a real stressful situation. And what I did was I internalized it, but I also figured at some point, and I don't know how I did this, it's not about me. They have other issues. I don't know what their issues are. And if you realize that and you don't make it the personal thing, then it's kind of almost like a deflection. So I got hit with all this stuff and all this verbiage, but it was like, it's not really about me. This guy just needs to get it out. He's venting because he's got a problem at home or at somewhere else. There's something else going on. And I'm going to allow him to get that time out. As long as he doesn't get physical, he's good. And I'm good. And then we're okay. And so that came over time too, because that wasn't always who I was. And now that's just a natural. It's like I could even teach that class if I had to about, hey, this is what you need to do. And I know who I am. I know what I can take and what I can't. But I also know it's not a personal thing. And I'm not going to take it personally. And then maybe we can have the conversation later if I need to have that. If I'm in that workspace and the stuff is going on, thank God I'm no longer in that space. But if I was, I would know this is how we need to handle it, because we got to handle it, because it may loom its ugly head at some other point. So we're going to make sure that we get it, but we're going to dissipate it in a way that we both benefit from. And I haven't always been that way, but I'm learning and as I go. Yeah.
I was very lucky. In my, I think 20s or 30s, I took a class. It was called Verbal Judo, and there may be some books on it. If anybody's interested, they can certainly Google it. But it was all about how to diffuse situations like Calvin just explained. And personally, I had an experience. I fortunately learned this a little earlier, maybe than most, because my dad had a very high stress job, and he was very much a yeller, right? My mom would get quiet and cry. My dad would yell and carry on. Okay, great. But he and I had a very close relationship. And so I remember when I was about 14, he came home one day, and I had been doing homework or whatever I was doing. And he was just in this awful mood, and he's just yelling and hollering, carrying on. And I'm just sitting there going, what in the world did I do? So I finally just stopped, and I said to him, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure you don't need to be yelling at me about it, because I'm not the problem. And through his very loud, booming voice, he yelled back, you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with you. I just need to get it out. And I was like, okay. So once I knew that I didn't need to be on the defensive, then I could give him that space. And I realized, a lot of times when he was just blustering, it was frustration or it was fear, because, how most people can't just walk in and tell their 14-year-old, dad's afraid of something, So you kind of, don't, quit taking it personally, and sometimes it is personal. And then, sometimes the gloves do have to come off, but that's another topic for another day.
So Heather said the book, The 4 Agreements, I haven't read this, really helped me stop taking things personally. Learning how to do that was a game changer. Has anybody read that here?
I haven't read it, heard of it, but I haven't read it yet. No. Wow.
Okay.
It's a very short read, but it's very good.
Good. So, one of the things related to this particular topic that I've also figured out for myself, there's sort of two things. So one, I have found that I sometimes will trigger other people because I am a very direct person. And I was talking with Kate about this. One of the things that I also realized is I started to do things that became not me. Because other people were being triggered, I was trying to, comfort them and try to figure out a different way to handle it. And I ended up having my depth psychologist say, why? Why is it your responsibility to make that person comfortable? Because when we choose to try to make it comfortable, we're also not allowing them to figure out their own challenges, the lessons that they also need to learn. She goes, by you not being yourself, you're not being true to you. And, as long as you're not doing things negative, like, Calvin, you said, you don't come to fisticuffs, things like that. But if I'm being true to who I am, which is a very direct person, and that triggers you, that's really not my problem. That is really a you problem, that it is something that you have discomfort with. Why do you have discomfort with that? That's something for that person to figure out. The other thing that I realized this week, I went through a lot this not this week, but the previous week. And I had a lot of self-discoveries for myself. The other thing was when I'm sitting with a decision, if I don't feel at peace with the decision, then there is something else to discover. So why don't I feel at peace with what it is that I'm, the choice that I'm making? What else am I supposed? It doesn't mean I'm not supposed to go down that path of what it is, because sometimes discomfort is an invitation for you to figure out what else do I need to learn, or what else is there that I'm supposed to be understanding. So I went through like a lot of emotions and I was like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I also doubting myself? Why is it that I'm, questioning, who it is that I am as a person? So, but I spent some time really. So for me, one of the indicators for me is when I don't feel at peace. When I'm sitting there and I'm like, something's bothering me, and it also manifested itself and ended up in an argument with my husband because I was feeling upset about things that were going on politically and I was getting mad about it. And my husband did exactly what you were talking about. He took it personally. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why are they doing this? I'm upset. And he's like, why are you mad at me? And I'm like, the situation. And so he's taking it personal. One of the other things that I found that I have to do is sometimes when people get like that, I have to help them with co-regulation. And I realized that he is not good at co-regulating. Like he's not able to say, hey, I don't think you're meaning to take this out on me. Are you, is this at me, that type of thing, and helping me to also calm down, where I'm able to do that with him. I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's, is something going on with work, or are you mad at me? Like what's going on? And so sometimes just allowing people that frustration of getting mad at things, and realizing that it isn't really you. It's just they're mad at whatever the situation is.
Right.
Right.
Well, and to spin that, how grateful that they feel safe enough with you to do that.
With you. Right. Right. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, we have some other people that have also joined us. Divine, she said, hello, everyone. I apologize for tuning in late. And then she said, I'm reframing this. I am on divine timing.
Yes. Yes.
Chin Ray is here as well. Hello.
And
Divine also said, growth can require an identity shift. Triggers are guides too. I like that. And then co-regulation, yes, so much is beneath the surface, but it revealed sooner or later.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my gosh, this has been such an amazing conversation. And funny enough, I mentioned to them that sometimes you have very few questions that you ask that end up morphing into all kinds of different things, paths that you don't really expect today. So what I would like to do is sort of end today, having each of you talk a little bit about anything that final thoughts that you have about this particular topic. And also if there's any way that if you want people to be able to connect with you or other information about yourself that you want to share, to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to give you both a little bit of time. I'm going to give Kate some final thoughts on what she has to give you guys some time.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Well, first, I really have enjoyed the conversation today, and I think the four of us are an awesome combo. So we should totally take this show on the road. But what I really loved how we kind of covered a lot of ground today in terms of how we treat ourselves internally, and the boundaries and the things that we surround ourselves externally. I loved the stories and the vulnerabilities, that you guys both were willing to share. I felt like that was amazing, and I know that it's not always easy to share those things.
Mhm.
I also know that
Mhm.
when we truly do understand the impact of, you know, what is happening internally and how that's mirrored around us, when you do that and you have that awareness, it can't help but lead to authenticity, right? Like that is, it's like a natural next step. Like
Mhm.
if you are that aware of your internal, then you are kind of living in your truth. You're always holding on to your values. You know,
Mhm.
those are like natural next steps, and very, very correlated. And I simply don't think there's anything that's more badass than that, right? Like
Right.
if everyone was doing these things that we talked about today, the world would just be such a better place, you know? and and that's when at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's about, you know, respecting yourself, building yourself up, and then being able to make those impacts externally.
Mhm.
If we can all have that type of impact, um, imagine what could be.
I love that. Calvin, I'm going to have you go next, and then I'll go to Cari, and then I'll finish things up today.
Okay, so when Kate said that, I thought about a Dolly Parton quote that I love, and I know I've written it down in a couple places. She said, "Find out who you are and do it on purpose." And I love the part that we talked about in terms of working on yourself, because you really can't control all this other stuff, all the external stuff that's happening out there. But if I work on myself, I'm internal, right? It's not what you see on the outside, really. It's the inside of me that's really who I am. So if I keep working on myself, and all of us in this room, I believe, are trying to do that. We're trying to be good students, working on ourselves, trying to improve. And we'll go back to Cari, you'll like this. We'll go back to the ageism thing. So I don't care how old you are, as long as you continue to work on yourself. So my mom was 97 when she passed away. But what I loved about her and what I need to role model for myself was she was always trying to improve herself, even up until the last days. So I know that worked for her. I think it can work for any of us if we continue to, because once you stop, then you stop. That's it.
When you
And
rest, you
don't
rust.
get better. Right.
Yeah.
So you got to keep working on it. You got to keep improving it. I think we're all in this room in here for a reason today. I think I am exceptionally excited about what the future holds. I know that if I'm humble, I know I've got a lot more growing and a lot more learning to do. I've learned some things in this room. You know, when you see me putting my hands down, it's not because I'm being disrespectful. I'm writing notes, so I'm a note taker, and I picked up some really good things that I'll use in the process in the future. But keep doing those things that that will make you better, and then continue to work on your little part of the world, because all of us have this little place. We were talking about Wisconsin and Green Bay and places out, and I'm in Texas. Work on that place that you're at, just to make the world better, because the other stuff is it's kind of like what we were saying before. There's a lot of superficial stuff out there. There's a lot of stuff that you can't control, but I can control what I do and how I react to things and who I am, and I can make my little part of the world a whole lot better. That's what it's all about, I think.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I think for me, my big parting shot for the sports fans out there would be, even if you're joking, do your best to not speak negatively about yourself, because your body and your brain doesn't recognize it that way. And it can have such a big impact, not only on you, but if you don't feel good, you know, that energy is being projected out. And so if you don't take the steps to change the way that your internal voice is speaking to you, if you're not changing it, you're choosing it, right? And so I think that would be my one big takeaway. And the other thing, one of my sisters and I, we always, at the start of the year, we try and come up with an anchor word, you know, and we try to have not resilience, because then, you know, some people are just tired of being resilient. So for me this year, my word was contentment. And contentment isn't about not wanting to strive and change things, but it's about an ease and a peacefulness of mind.
Mhm.
And so when I feel like I'm spinning or getting ready to spin, I'll pause and think of that word. So find yourself an anchor word, you know, and if your anchor word is, you know, cheesecake, so be it. Go get that cheesecake, right? So
It's a great word.
thank you for having us.
Yeah, I just want to first just thank you both for coming. And it always ends up being just an amazing dynamic and duo every time. And people never know each other, but it ends up just being a very cohesive and just amazing group of people that really play on each other. So thank you both for taking time to come out today and to chat and just really share, as Kate said, and being vulnerable with us today. And then also just thank you to the audience. You guys are always so engaging. Thank you so much, because it really does make the conversation more impactful just to really hear you guys. And then Kate, thank you for always showing up late and allowing me to have a joke about that. But just thank you for being an amazing you. And just your warmth and just the way that you recap things. I always just appreciate, and I always pull so much from what you say. So my final thoughts for today, I want to sort of play upon each of the things that you guys talked about, and then also add my extra little flavor. So one of the things that my depth psychologist has helped me to understand is that we all have an unconscious. And that unconscious does things that we don't even really know. 80% of what we do is unknown to us. And when you really think about our actions and the things that we're doing, we don't even really understand where it is our unconscious is trying to pull us to. And that's why synchronicity or different things like that happen in life that we have to pay attention to, that it really is our unconscious helping to unfold potentially the things that are going on. So if we're going through turmoil in the things that we're dealing with, as Calvin talked about, I think the community aspect that you talked about, Calvin, was so important. It is finding your group of people that will help you be better, and not just to agree with you, but people that will strive to make you a better person is what I would encourage people to do. And then what you talked about, Cari, is really that self-talk. And one of the things we talked about in the past is words matter. Words matter not only to the things that you say to other people, but the things that you say to yourself. So you can drive that outer world based on the inner words and the things that you say to yourself. The things you think are possible are possible. The things that you say aren't possible aren't possible.
Right. They're not going to happen.
You choose your life. You choose your words. You choose emotions. You choose how it is that you're going to feel in life. And then where this all sort of wraps up is what Kate said. Authenticity, finding out what is true to you, and going back to that inner feeling of, as we're feeling our emotions, feel your emotions, like really sit with them and understand where it is those emotions are coming from. That's where you'll then find the insight into why it is that you're feeling things. Or if you're dealing with disease, understand more about what that disease is and why it is that you might be going through that. What is the other lesson that you might have? Because when we are true to ourselves, when we are really authentic and fearlessly authentic, we are then living out our purpose in life. And it may be the purpose in the moment. It may be the purpose for a longer life, you know, what our overall goal is, or it might be for a short period of time. So for me, one of the lessons that I have learned this week is to just be myself and allow others to deal with what that turmoil is for themselves, because that'll also help them grow.
Yes. Good.
So thank you everyone for joining us. Next month, we are covering the law of cause and effect. And so we're going to be talking a little bit further about that particular law. We're going to start off the month talking about what it is and what you need to pay attention to. And then we'll, of course, be having a panel on. We'll also be talking to a guest speaker. And then Kate and I will also get 1 week. We will get vulnerable and talk about the law of cause and effect and how it impacted us. And so thank you all again for joining us today. And it has been an amazing conversation. And I look forward to seeing, connecting with you guys further. So connect with you guys on LinkedIn, check out the Happy Leader book. And so be sure to connect with Cari and Calvin. And thank you guys again so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.